So, you've been through a time period with Trulia in the past, 2008, and quite the time to be building a marketplace kind of in the housing market. So, I'd love to chat about kind of given everything going on like today, and kind of some of the factors like how you kind of think through and or maybe even talking with some of your portfolio company founders on how to think through what we're going through.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of been drifting down for the last 4 months, and it feels in the last couple of weeks, it's kind of like, okay, yeah, no, this is not a sort of like negative sentiment. This is sort of negative reality. And the way that the framework that I use, and we wrote about this at the pandemic about 2 years ago. I was really thinking about it in three buckets. So one is really kind of being real with the challenges you have, and that you could think of this as sort of playing defense. And so that means it's going to be very hard to raise money. Or harder to raise money in the foreseeable future. And if you don't have great traction, great product market fit, then you really have to focus on your cash position. And so really, and thinking about, okay, how do you optimize your cost structure for the go forward plan? And this is, probably this is most typical for kind of, the defense is where you have potential losses, right? You are kind of like Series seed A, B company, you already have funding, you already have cash. But really just being real. The old plan is the old plan. There needs to be a new plan, and you need to kind of accept reality and just be singly focused on the cash position and make sure you give yourself time to be able to, either become profitable or to be in a position where you can raise the next round of financing. And financing is getting done. They're getting done. We're closing deals every week. The venture markets are cooled off, but they're not shut down. The second piece is really leaning into the opportunity, so playing offense. And it's sort of it's been said many times. I think it was like Chesky was tweeting like, the best time to build a company is in the downturn. That's true. It sure doesn't feel like it. So it's really hard. But it is true that, everything's cheaper, less competition. But most importantly, in these sort of economic shifts, there are typically, and particularly for marketplaces, there are supply and demand imbalances. So, I mean, we saw it sort of very, very clearly in the pandemic. Like, everyone was at home, and they were looking for substitutes for their kind of normal activities. So Instacart, DoorDash exploded in volume, Peloton exploded in volume. And that, some of them capitalized it on, I think, extremely well. DoorDash and Uber Eats, kind of most principally with food, and then used that to build a scale in their marketplace that continued through. And you are, where there's this change, there's this opportunity. And so if you look at these market shifts, they typically are kind of, in a normal economy, there's supply demand balances, new marketplace, existing markets crop up that basically look to match supply and demand. And if you suddenly have a massive seismic shift in the economy or geopolitically or something else, then you see this supply demand imbalance. And so marketplaces can come in and try to match that new supply or that new demand in a more effective way. And that, very quickly can give you a tactic to solve the chicken and egg problem, the cold start problem, that you can utilize very quickly and very efficiently. It's amazing the velocity at which things explode. I mean, Clubhouse being a sort of example, exploded, but then it fizzled. But things can spread very, very quickly when you have this supply demand imbalance. So that's just being opportunistic and being aggressive, because you are, as a startup, your single best, your single strongest tactic is your speed, and you have no real incumbency challenge or innovator's dilemma. You can look at it and say, like, well, I'm just going to go over here, and this is where the opportunity is. I'm going to hibernate this old business. This is the opportunity. I'm going to attack it really hard. And then the incumbents are typically, too slow or just not able to react to the reality. So that's the second piece, and really being opportunistic and playing offense. The third piece is really about managing psychology. Like I said, it's easy to say these are the best times. Doesn't really feel like that, because you're running on fumes. You've just let a third of the team go, whatever it is. You're like, you're worried about not making payroll in X month's time. It's like, this is really hard. And so really thinking about how do you manage your own psychology? How do you manage your team's psychology? And you need to up how you think about that, from a communication perspective, from a culture perspective, from a personal perspective, because it just got a lot harder. And so that's the framework. I wrote this article, which maybe someone could send around the chat, but I think it's 28 moves. And in our pre-chat, you were saying, like, how would that be different? Like, what would be? And I was reading through it a couple of weeks ago, just because I was feeling the tea leaves, and I don't think that different. I don't think there's that much difference in that. A lot of the perspectives from this were born out of pre-pandemic economic shocks, like the one in 2000, the one in 2008. And while there's a lot of references to pandemics or pandemic, they're really about how to navigate those experiences from what I'd seen in the portfolio and also elsewhere in 2000, 2008. I guess one of the differences, it feels that, and we'll see where it ends up, but it feels like, I vividly remember there were a couple of like major catalysts for kind of, in 2000 and 2008, and you saw kind of Lehman collapse and the stock market go down massive amounts. Then you saw in the dot-com collapse. Here it seems to be like multiple fires going on at the same time, and no kind of like major shock, which you could see yourself out of it. The pandemic was really severe, but actually economically quite short-lived. Whereas this feels like it might be longer and more complicated. So, there's war, there's inflation, there's rates, there's oil. I'm not a macro economist to really know how it's going to end up, but I was surprised how quickly things came back in 2000. I'm probably feeling less optimistic. This might be more similar to kind of 2008 in its longevity, or sort of 2000s, 2002. Sorry to be the negative Nelly on this, but I think that's just the reality of where we are.